I think you have to realize that this is still a business, and just because you're passionate about the music doesn't mean that the business is going to be passionate to you. Like, you have to like secure a position in the business and make sure like you're always protected in this business.
So inspiring. CEO, my title.
Hi, my name is Genius. I'm an artist, entrepreneur, execs, mixing the music business and the music world all in one. I grew up in Jamaica, a rural part of Jamaica in Westmoreland, about 20 minutes outside of Negril. So growing up, I think like what really inspired me was like the environment I grew up in, right? It's just like, I feel like I had one of the best childhoods kind of growing up before I left Jamaica. It was a lot of stuff that kind of like technology-wise wasn't there, that I'm kind of thankful for, kind of like growing up. But a lot of like my inspiration was drawn from like the environment and, you know what I'm saying, what we did as a kid, school. My dad had a farm, so we raised animals and we grew everything. So just that kind of experience kind of just like shaped who I am. You know what I'm saying? I like to think of myself as kind of like a beach boy, country boy, island boy type of thing. So I think that shaped a lot of like at the core who I am. I was probably one of the only people in the neighborhood with like multiple computers at the time. And I remember at the time it was like CD burners, right? Like these CD burning towers, and I had built one and I was like, I'm gonna sell CDs. I'm just gonna just like burn CDs and sell CDs. And I started doing it like, you know what I'm saying, for my friends. And I was like, okay, I'm probably one of the only people with the CD burning program or whatever. So I started downloading a bunch of songs. And then that started helping me to fit in, because people would come to school with like a list of songs and they would be like, hey, can you make a CD with these on there, right? So it just started spreading like I'm the guy to make CDs, and everybody just started bringing me their list. And what that did was it introduced me to like the Atlanta culture and what was going on. So before you knew it, I just had like a bunch of all the songs that all the people at school listened to, and I started listening. And I was like, okay, I started getting like a feel of what's going on in the culture based on what they were talking about. And that helped me just build a large library. I was doing all the Jamaican music, so I built up a large library of like reggae and dancehall music, and I built up a large library of like hip hop music from all my friends at school that was supplying me. And it became a real business. And I think it was like part of like going back to like that entrepreneurial spirit. I always was like, okay, regardless of what's going on, I need to sell something, right? In Jamaica, my dad used to be like, here goes the crops, I'm sending you to the market, and I'm not coming to pick you up until it's all gone. So I had to like literally walk around and try to sell everything before I could go back home. So it was just kind of like a natural transition into that kind of like business. And I built up this large, you know, catalog of music that I had on my computer. And I came across a software called Virtual DJ. And I was like, wow, now it started making sense. I could like mix the songs, and I just started learning Virtual DJ. And, you know, so I just dived into it. I was just like, okay, I love computers. Here's a computer software that works on something I have the music, and it just all started kind of like meshing together. I started Monopoly because a lot of the marketing services we were building at that time was working, right? So I realized like, yo, you could build out these massive like playlist networks on Spotify. You could build out these massive like influencer pages on Twitter. And it was working for what we were doing at the label at Rare Sound, and I was seeing it working, and I was like, this is something I could sell. So I started like working with a few labels, and before you know it, like all the majors was on my line, like trying to get these marketing services from 300, Interscope. I sold the marketing services to a bunch of different major labels, and it was working, and I was just like, wait, this is actually working. It's working for our label, it's working for the major labels. All this is working, I'm making a lot of money from it. But how long can this last, right? Because I always kind of felt like if you build a business that's at the mercy of like another company, then you could possibly be out of business if something changed, especially in marketing. In marketing, for sure, 100%. Like marketing changes every day, right? I was watching a Jay-Z interview around that time, and he said something. He was on the airplane. He was just like, yo, when we figure out how to do our own distribution, ain't nobody gonna be able to stop us. And kind of like a light bulb went off. I was just like, how hard would it be to get into distribution, right? Because when I was doing mixtapes and like hosting them and uploading them to like live mixtapes and Dat Piff, it was sort of a distribution business, but I was getting paid up front by the artist to just put the music out because it wasn't making money at that point.
some of my friends told me about a bunch of different, like, you need a platform. They was like, you need to be going through a platform, right? So they brought up all these different platforms, and I met with a few, and I didn't really like the solution they were giving, right? I would like, you know what I'm saying? I would even do like test accounts. Like, let me just try distributing something, make sure it hits, and some of the stuff didn't align with what I had in mind, because I was used to working like with the major labels, so I see how their business was set up. So I flew back to New York, and my friend Patrick was like, I should introduce you to somebody from FUGA. And I was like, I'll take the meeting. And I remember I flew to New York, and I met with the FUGA team, and they showed me what FUGA had going on. I was like, oh, this is perfect. And then I did a bunch of research on FUGA, and I was just like, okay, they've been in the game for a while, and that's kind of like how I officially transitioned into the distribution business, because I was like, okay, our marketing services are working, right? So if I take the marketing services and give that to our distribution client, then we should be able to start blowing them up. So that was like my whole train of thought. So I felt like I had the marketing side of the business before I had the distribution side of the business. Okay, so Monopoly has evolved into, from that point, I kind of figured out like what artists really want, right? You know what I'm saying? There's a bunch of distribution companies in the space, but I think where we evolved was we wanted to be boutique, right? We didn't want to be an aggregator. We didn't want to be like a TuneCore or a DistroKid, because I realized like most songs don't get streams, and you're kind of just, you know what I'm saying, like that business model wasn't quite working for us. And the artists that we were talking to was mostly artists that was in kind of like a similar situation we was with the label, right? You're not on the major anymore, and you have no idea what to do. So we saw a space in the business where there were artists that's coming off majors, that's going back to being independent, and they needed kind of like an infrastructure. Some of the marketing services that we were selling to the majors that were working, they needed more like internal structure to kind of like still be able to survive in this no man's land of independence. Now, where we're at now as a business is, of course, we've grown. Number one thing, we've grown. We've been able to grow significantly over the past few years, and we've been able to sign, like, we had a bunch of huge acts that I'm super proud of that came through Monopoly. First, after Camp was done with his Interscope deal, he came to Monopoly to do his distribution, right? So that was great. He's coming off Interscope, my business partner. We're able to have like now a vertical, right? So we had the label, we had the studio, and we had distribution. So it's kind of like our pipeline was very direct with nobody kind of in between, right? So I saw how that was working for him. Then we ended up having like DC Young Fly, which is a comedy act, and he put out a single that became a huge single with us. And then we just started kind of evolving. We started signing like different genres. So we signed the reggae artist, and then we signed Hanumankind out of like India, and he blew up and became big. So everything that I've kind of learned over the years, I kind of just try to apply to our clients, and it's helped us a lot. We've grown in revenue, and now we're kind of like officially a full-fledged like distribution company, meaning like, you know, we still use FUGA. I love FUGA. We still use FUGA Tech to fuel our business, but now we have direct deals, and, you know what I'm saying, the company is scaling. The most important thing that has happened to me that has changed the way I view a business is, I mean, it's one of those entrepreneur curves where you have to kind of like separate passion from business. I'm always passionate about music, right? To a fault, to where sometimes I ignore certain business pitfalls that could kind of like come back and like bite you. For example, right, like distributing and signing artists, right? Like I felt like when I started out, I was just so passionate about the music. I wasn't like super like worried about the business of, you know what I'm saying? We'll have like contracts, but just after I've seen us work with a bunch of artists and blow them up, and seeing like how like maybe the majors will come in and just take these artists off your hands, and it'll just kind of leave you with nothing. That's been like the biggest lessons. It's just like, I think you have to realize that this is still a business, and just because you're passionate about the music doesn't mean that the business is going to be passionate to you. But you have to like secure a position in the business and make sure like you're always protected in this business. And that goes back to even like us being with Interscope, right? And us like early not looking into like contracts and agreements. Like I feel like the biggest thing I've learned in this business, like, bro, you have to like look at every single contract, read every single contract, or have the best legal people around you or the best team around you to be able to like make sure that your business is 100% in order. Because I feel like I've been bit a few times, you know what I'm saying, in business deals in the music industry, where I've had to learn the hard way.